We're in Yoma, Ayin Hayamad Bays, 75 B. We continue our discussion on the manna, which took us to a discussion on the Slav, the quail, the meat that the Jews had complained that they didn't have, and then God provided it for them. And we mentioned yesterday, this is what we closed off with, that the manna itself, which was it was appropriate for them to ask for it because they need bread to survive, so it was given to them appropriately in the morning when they had time to prepare it and they had empty stomachs. But the Slav, the quail, the meat, which they inappropriately asked for because they didn't need it, that was given to them at nighttime when it's not good to eat because it's too dark and they're already full. Before we go further, I want to mention something Robert said yesterday after the class. We mentioned that the manna is compared to mother's milk or demon. And both those were used to describe, both those were used to derive the notion that the manna had many flavors. In the same way mother's milk has many flavors and a demon has many colors. So we suggested one explanation to what it means in Torah, that people have different flavors of Torah, either in terms of their relationship with Hashem, or different flavors of Torah in terms of dealing with their own problems. And another suggestion you're suggesting, and that's going to be supported later in the Gemara here, is that Torah, as we quoted a number of times, the famous Gemara, which says that one who merits, then Torah becomes a potion of life. One who doesn't merit, Torah becomes a potion of death, poison. And the explanation is, at least one of them, the way Chassidus understands it, is if the one who studies Torah with the intention that he's looking to connect to God, and his Torah is a blessing, it serves to connect him to Hashem. But if God forbid one uses Torah as a reason to show off, and the Torah itself, every time he gets more Torah knowledge, he feels more egotistical about himself, and it just serves to embellish his own ego, making it worse for him, and thus referred to as a potion of death, as a poison. So likewise, similarly here, Torah is either like mother's milk, sustaining somebody, or Torah, if God forbid, misused, could be like a demon. Of course, Torah remains holy, and a person can, with a little humility, transform all of his knowledge to be positive. But nonetheless, it has these two aspects, and perhaps later in the Gemara, there's going to be something that's going to support something similar to that. Okay, so now having talked about the issue of the Slav, the Gemara now discusses the verse which tells us that the Jews who complained about the Slav, they complained about not having meat, they died. They died during the episode of eating the meat. The meat itself had a negative impact on them. And the verse is not clear exactly when and how they died, and therefore the Gemara is going to comment on that. So it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think it's 9 lines from the top of the page on Ayin Hayamad Bays, 75b in Yoma. The third word, habasar. Alright, the first word of the line is man, soda, and then the third word is habasar, with a little aleph next to habasar. Okay, so the verse reads, habasar edenu ben shineyem. The meat is still between their teeth. That's one verse which states the point at which they died, while the flesh is still in their teeth. So that would mean basically right away. The ksiv, and another verse reads, a few verses earlier reads, ad chodesh yamim, until a month. So, how does this work? Do they die immediately or within a month? So if it says the Gemara, beinanim, the intermediaries, the one who complained, but not so intensely. They were not so wicked in their complaining. The altar, they died right away. More peaceful death. The altar they died right away. The shoyim, but the wicked ones, the one who were really behaving badly in this context, mitzdarin, were in pain, v'holchen ad chodesh yamim, pain for a full month until they actually died. It was prolonged death for those who were more deserving of punishment. Okay. Then the Gemara reads like this. The verse reads, when it describes the actual Slav, the actual quail coming down, the verse reads that Vayischetu lahem satayach, it was spread out for them, spread out, Svivos hamachana, around the camp. The term used to say that it was spread out is satoyach. That's the root word, which is sin, tes, and ches. The Gemara is now going to talk about and comment on that word. So the first word is vayischetu. It was spread out. Omer Shlaka says, Al tikri vayischetu. Don't read it only as with a sin, vayischetu, that was spread out. Ella, rather read it vayishchetu. Read it with a shin, turning it from, well, first of all a shin, and then put the ches before the tes. So yistechu, setoyach, sin, tes, ches means spread out. But if you switch around the letters tes and ches, and you put it into a shin, it becomes shachat, which means to slaughter, ritual slaughtering. So yishchetu. So for Reish Lakish says, don't just read it that was spread out, but they actually have to slaughter it. Malamed, this teaches us, says Reish Lakish, that the haters of the Jews were deserving. This is a euphemism for the Jews themselves. When the Gemara says something negative about Jewish people, instead of referring to them as Jews, it refers to them as the haters of Jews. It's a euphemism for Jews themselves, actually. So Neschaivu, Yisrael, the haters of Jews, the Jewish people at the time, were deserving shchita of being slaughtered. That's how terrible they were, complaining. They deserved to get that kind of shchita. This is pretty harsh. Obviously, they didn't all get that. Only a certain group got death, as mentioned before. Okay, the same verse reads, as I mentioned before, "Vayischetu lahem satoyach." It was spread out for them like spread out. So again, this word satoyach appears in the verse again twice. So Tanamish made Rabbi Shua ben Karcha. It was taught in the name of Rabbi Shua, son of Karcha. Al trikish satoyach. Don't read it satoyach with a sin and then the tes before the ches. Ella, rather read it shachut. Read it shin and then ches before the tes. And this extra reading teaches us, Malamed teaches us, Sheyara Lama Yisrael Mamon. This teaches us that the man brought with it davar, something shaton shchita, which requires ritual slaughtering. I guess this means to say that the Slav itself just requires shchita. Right? It required shchita. Now, why is this news? It's news because the Torah doesn't command anywhere to do shchita. It doesn't command anywhere how to do shchita.
How to do it?
Yeah. Or even that it exists. And we're going to see in a moment that this is one of the big proofs for the oral Torah, as we'll see. And that's what Gemara is about to say. Omer Rabbi said, in response to Bishur ben Karcha. There's a footnote here. Okay, Rabbi Yossi maybe. Okay, so there's a response here. Is it from here, from this verse that says satoyach, and you're reading it shachot, to tell you that you're required to do ritual slaughtering? This is not the verse which supports it. We have a different verse which supports the idea that they had ritual slaughtering. How do we get to that, even though it's not explicit in the verse? Because the verse already reads, this is a verse in Tehillim, but the verse reads, Vayam Tehillim ka'afar sa'ar she'er ukechel yamim oif kanaf. God spread out for them like the dust, food, and like the sand, he put out winged birds. Okay, so this is a verse in Tehillim saying that God provided birds. So they certainly had birds. We don't need to have, right? So Tehillim tells us already that God provided birds. By saying that I spread out for you bread like the dust, Tehillim is describing what happened in the desert. Right? So God spread out for them bread and birds like the dust. That's essentially what the verse says. So we know that they had birds. Okay, that's clear. Now, how do we get from there to shchita? V'tanya, we've taught, Rabbi teaches. The verse reads, This is the verse that I was referring to earlier. The Torah says, this is in Devarim, Deuteronomy. The verse says that one day God's going to grant you that your land will be bigger, and you're going to have lots of cattle you're going to enjoy, and you're going to slaughter your cattle like I told you to. You will slaughter your animals like I told you to. And the verse goes on to say, you'll be thankful to Hashem, etc.
Just those words, like I told you to.
Exactly. I slaughtered, you're going to slaughter like I told you to. Where did he tell you? Yeah. He never said. So this is an indication from the biblical text itself that there was oral transmission outside the biblical transmission, outside the written text. Otherwise, what's the reference here? Obviously, God spoke to Moses outside of the written text. Now, and therefore, Malamed, this teaches us, therefore that means that Moshe Rabbeinu was commanded verbally, orally, not just the written text, with respect to the esophagus and the, what's the other pipe? The ventricle? Trachea, the two pipes that are supposed to be slaughtered? Yeah, trachea. The windpipe and the air pipe and the food pipe, bottom line. I'm not sure what the medical terms are. And that they have to both be cut in order for ritual slaughtering. That you have to get at least the majority of one when you're slaughtering a bird. And you have to have the majority of both of them when you're slaughtering an animal. And this we know this from the fact that God says you will slaughter the animal like I told you. Okay, so why is the Gemara raising this here? The Gemara is telling us as follows. We know from Tehillim that God made birds fall down from the heavens. Because God said that the Tehillim says that God spread out the birds like the dust of the earth. And we know from this verse that God orally told Moshe that you have to slaughter, do ritual slaughtering, do shchita. If that's the case, then if they had bird, they were slaughtering it. We don't need to mix around the reading of the verse to take the word satoyach, which means spread out, rearrange letters, and make it shachot that it was slaughtered. We know it was slaughtered because we know they had birds, and we know they were commanded to slaughter birds. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. And therefore, says Rabbi, so what does this mean that it was spread out? What's that extra word there? Because it says, it was spread out for them, spread out. So if it's not teaching you that it was slaughtered, because we already know that, then what does the word satayach teach you? It teaches us, says the Gemara, that it came down for them in rows. The word satayach, without rearranging letters, means spread out, but it could also mean rows. So it came down for them in neat rows, and they were able to walk up and down the aisles and pick their quail. Okay. This is the Gemara's commentary on the Slav, on the birds. And the floor is open for deeper meaning and interpretation.
Anything about why in rows, just to make it easier?
Why in rows? What's the meaning of the Slav? What does it represent beyond just the bread, the manna? What does the meat represent? Why it's spread out? Why in rows? Why such harsh? They died, and Rabbi Shlakish says they were deserving of shchita. I'd like to see more of this, but this is what the Gemara says on the literal level. Okay, further stated, the Gemara says, "Ksiv." The verse reads, in describing the manna, lechem. It uses the term bread. Ksiv. It also reads describing the manna, shemen, that it's oil. Ksiv. And it also reads describing the manna, dvash, honey. So bread, oil, honey. Why all three? Amr Rabbi Yosi Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Yosi Bachanina states, Lina Arim, for young men who are healthy and strong, lechem, it tasted like bread, or was for them like bread. Lizkanim, for elders, shemen, it's like oil. It's easier to consume. Latinoikos, but for children, dvash, it's like honey. It's like honey. So if we're going to take it on the spiritual level and compare this to Torah, we might say that the Gemara is actually telling us the appropriate way of teaching Torah and learning Torah. When you're teaching to children, it's got to be sweet. It can't be harsh. Otherwise, the kid's going to reject it. Torah's got to be sweet like honey. Right? The famous custom that goes way back. First time the child comes into classroom to learn Torah, he has aleph beis, and his father spills honey on it, and the kid licks it, and the candy's dropping from the head. Right? It's a whole ceremony to, give the kid a good flavor for Torah study, make it sweet like honey. When a person gets a little older, it's got to be like bread. He has to look at Torah as bread. This is what sustains him. This is my bread. My bread and butter is Torah. And then as he gets even older, and he's getting into an age where he's not looking for survival in that sense, but he's looking for a geschmack. He's looking for enjoyment in life. It's got to be like fatty oil, and enjoy. And he's older age. He can sit and enjoy. You're not in the growing stage where he needs to eat, robustly and study Torah in that sense. But as Torah becomes shemen, becomes oil, becomes geschmack, becomes enjoyable, perhaps. Okay, so now here gets to the Gemara. Here gets the Gemara that was said that can support your idea, Robert. Okay, Ksiv Slav, the quail that came from the heaven, is referred in the Torah as Slav. Now the Slav here is spelled with a sin. Now a sin could be Shlav with a shin, right? But Kardinon, it's read Slav Samach. It's read with the same sound, sin and Samach. It's read as a Slav. Now why is that? So says the Gemara, Amar Bechina says, Tzadikim, the righteous among them, Oichlin Oisam, they eat it. They eat the Slav, the quail, the Shalva, in harmony. Right? The root word of Shalva is Shin. The root letters are Shin Lamed Vav, which is similar to Shlav, the letters of the word Slav. So Slav, written with a sin slash shin, can be read as Shalav, peaceful. So it was peaceful to those. But it's read Slav with a samach, with a si, right? And therefore the Shayim, the wicked, Oichlin Oisa, they eat it, V'doimalahen, and it's compared to them, Kesilivon. I'm not sure I pronounced the word, but basically Silivon is, as Rashi tells us, in Aramaic, Silivon is thorns. So for the righteous, quail is peaceful. For the wicked, it's like thorns. And it perhaps supports what you were saying, that two people are consuming the same Torah, but for one person who's with humility, it's peaceful, it's a blessing. The same person who's studying Torah to embellish his own arrogance, and it's like a thorn. Okay, so I said it supports kind of what you were saying. Okay, so final comment on from the Gemara on how the Jews enjoyed the Slav. Amr Rabbi Chanan bar Rava. Rabbi Chanan, son of Rava, said, Daled minei Slavhein. There are 4 types of Slav, of this quail. 4 types. Ve'eluhein, and they are the following: Sichli, Kibli, Pisyuni, and Slav. Don't know what these are, but these are 4 different names for 4 different types of Slav, of quail, apparently. Baila de Kulu Sichli. The best of these 4 is the one known as Sichli. Geriya de Kulu, the worst of them all, is Slav. Is the Slav, the one described in the Torah. So the one described in the Torah is the lowest ranking of the 4 of them. And even that one was how good? V'hava, and it is kitziporta. It's like a tzipor is like a kind of bird. Rabbi Steinsaltz translated as a sparrow. Yeah. La bitanura, and they would take this lowest level of the Slav, the one described in the Torah. They put it into an oven. V'tofach v'hava moli tanura. And it was so fatty that it would expand to fill the entire oven. Maskina le'at sarrifi, and they would put it on top of 13 layers of bread. V'achreina, and the lowest of the 13 layers of bread, necheles would eat. Elai de taruvas, can only be eaten if you mixed it with other flavor because of the fat that was of the quail that spilled down was so thick. So that's how fatty.
Rich meal.
Seems very, very rich. Yeah. So even though I don't know what the difference between the Slav and the bread is, but if they're both within the genre of Torah, what the difference between the two I don't know is, but let's just say they're both within the genre, they both represent the same area of Torah. So you can say a little bit of Torah comes in and it fills up one's whole oven. Meaning to say, even a little, it's not about how much time, it is about how much time, but it's not so much about how much Torah a person has, but whether or not the Torah he takes in expands and fills his whole mind. And that's the proper way. And then if it fills his whole mind, it saturates everything, all the way down to the 13 layers of bread get soaked in oil because of that. So a person studies Torah on one level just to, knows lots and lots and lots and lots. Then a person can have a little bit of Torah, but if he truly internalizes the message, it expands to fill his whole mind and then saturates the rest of his life. Kind of like the quail, it's expanding to fill the oven and saturating all the bread that it's sitting on top. Suggested reading.
Why 13, or there's no...
Why 13? I was thinking about that. 13 is a very significant number. The word echad, 1, his numerical value is 13. Right? Aleph, ches, and dalet is 1, is 13. Likewise, Ahava, love, Aleph, Hey, Vez, Hey is also 13. And of course, all of this is connected to the 13 principles, the 13 attributes of divine mercy. So maybe there's some connection there. Right? In Chassidus and Kabbalah, this 13 represents that which transcends. Like God's divine mercy transcends. The divine mercy, especially the 13 attributes, is what offers cleansing, right? Is what gives grants clemency, grants forgiveness. And the reason why it grants forgiveness, and the reason why it can transcend and fix sin, is because it transcends, right? The system says you broke the rules, you get punished. But mercy says, okay, we broke the rules, but still, I love the people. I can't destroy them like that. So it reaches a level that transcends the system, and maybe perhaps there's the connection to number 13 specifically. Perhaps. Okay, wonderful Shabbos, everybody. Every day.
I was also thinking about the oil.
Yeah.
The quail sitting on the bread.
Yeah.
That the oils, like in other areas of Torah, like during Hanukkah, that the oil's that inner dimension.
The oil represents fat oil represents the secret of Torah.
Yeah, the secrets.
Right. So in other words, if a person connects to Torah on a spiritual, deeper level, then it truly saturates his whole. Yeah. In other words, if a person studies only just the dry law, it could be related to that issue in his private life or somewhere else. But if Torah has a spiritual, mystical message, then it saturates the rest of his life. That's a good point. Shkoyach, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, wonderful day. Good Shabbos.